Your grandparents ate it without question, and the government called it safe for decades. But buried inside everyday foods are additives science has quietly proved are toxic. Some will shock you, others will make you question everything sitting in your pantry right now. The reasons why might change how you think about food forever. Number 15. Brominated vegetable oil. For decades, brominated vegetable oil, or BVO, was the hidden ingredient that kept your citrus sodas looking smooth and perfectly blended. It stopped fruit flavorings from separating, giving drinks like Mountain Dew that signature cloudy appeal. On the label, it barely registered, just 3 small letters tucked between artificial flavors. BVO was originally developed as a flame retardant in the 1920s before food manufacturers discovered it could stabilize citrus oils in beverages. By the 1950s and 60s, it had been quietly adopted across dozens of American soft drinks. The FDA placed it on a temporary interim approval list in 1977, a provisional status that somehow remained unchanged for over 40 years. But the bromine in BVO is the same element used in industrial fire suppressants, and it accumulates in human fatty tissue with repeated exposure. Scientists linked it to memory loss, nerve damage, headaches, and skin lesions in people who consumed large amounts of BVO containing beverages. The FDA finally moved to officially ban BVO from the U.S. food supply in July 2023. The ban followed decades of advocacy from scientists and consumer groups, yet both PepsiCo and Coca-Cola had already quietly removed BVO from their flagship formulas in 2014 and 2020 respectively, under growing public pressure. The European Union and Japan had banned the additive years before the US acted, making America one of the last developed nations to phase it out. Sometimes the most dangerous ingredients are the ones nobody questions for 40 years. Number 14. Potassium bromate. Bread baked with potassium bromate rises beautifully. It strengthens gluten, gives loaves that perfectly soft, pillowy texture, and helps them hold their shape in ways that natural flour simply can't match. Commercial bakeries loved it because it was cheap, reliable, and made their products look and feel exactly the way customers expected. Potassium bromate was introduced into industrial baking in the early 20th century and became standard practice across American bread production by the mid-1900s. The FDA classified it as generally recognized as safe, a designation that carried enormous institutional weight in post-war America, where food science was treated with deep public trust. Families ate it in every sandwich, every dinner roll, every hot dog bun, without a second thought. But in 1982, Japanese researchers published findings showing that potassium bromate caused kidney tumors, thyroid tumors, and gastrointestinal cancers in rodents. The International Agency for Research on Cancer has since classified it as a possible human carcinogen. Most of the bromate breaks down during baking, but residual amounts remain in the finished product. The United Kingdom banned potassium bromate in 1990. The European Union, Canada, Brazil, Nigeria, and China all followed. The FDA has never formally banned it in the United States. It simply advises bakers not to use it, while the state of California requires a cancer warning label on bromate containing bread products. Millions of loaves are still sold across America without any warning at all. A loaf of bread that looks perfect on the shelf may carry a hidden cost that took decades to uncover. Number 13. Red dye number 3. Red dye number 3, also known as erythrocene, gave maraschino cherries their iconic bright red glow, tinted the pink frosting on birthday cakes, and made strawberry-flavored candy look almost too good to resist. For generations of American children, that vivid crimson color was the visual promise of something sweet and celebratory. It seemed completely harmless. After all, it was just a color. Red dye number 3 was approved by the FDA in 1907 under one of the earliest food dye regulations in U.S. history. By mid-century, it was standard in everything from processed fruit to pill coatings to ice cream. It felt like an institution, as much a part of American food culture as the foods it colored. The FDA included it on its certified color additives list, with full approval for decades. But in '90 the FDA banned red dye number 3 from cosmetics and externally applied drugs after its own studies linked high doses to thyroid tumors in male rats. Inexplicably, that same ban did not extend to food. For over 30 years, a dye the FDA itself had flagged as a potential carcinogen remained perfectly legal in your candy dish. It took until January 2025 for the FDA to finally finalize a ban on red dye number 3 in food and ingested drugs, giving manufacturers until 2027 to reformulate their products. The delay spanned 3 decades and affected hundreds of food products consumed by millions annually. The FDA's own scientists had flagged the risk in 1984, but bureaucratic inertia kept it on shelves for another 40 years. When a government agency bans something from lipstick, but not from candy, someone should ask why. Number 12. Titanium dioxide. Titanium dioxide makes foods look cleaner, brighter, and more visually appealing than they naturally are. It is the reason certain white candies appear almost luminous, why some salad dressings look perfectly opaque, and why powdered donuts carry that pristine, snow-white sugar coating. It is also the same compound used in sunscreen, but food manufacturers adopted it decades ago simply to enhance the visual appeal of their products. Titanium dioxide found its way into the food supply gradually through the mid-20th century, gaining widespread use in candies, chewing gum, sauces, and baked goods. The FDA approved it as a color additive in 1966, capping its concentration at 1% of food weight. For years, it was considered entirely inert, a passive whitener that passed through the body without causing harm. But research published in the last decade revealed that titanium dioxide nanoparticles can cross the gut lining, accumulate in organs, and potentially disrupt immune function. A 2021 assessment by the European Food Safety Authority concluded there was sufficient evidence of genotoxicity, meaning the particles could damage DNA, and that no safe level of consumption could be established. The European Union banned titanium dioxide as a food additive in 2022, affecting an estimated 900 food products sold across member states. France had already implemented its own national ban in 2020. The FDA has not followed suit, and titanium dioxide remains legal and widely used in US food products today. Global food companies reformulated for European markets while continuing to sell the original versions in America. The same ingredient that makes candy look pristine may be quietly leaving its mark where you can't see it. Number 11. Azodicarbonamide. Azodicarbonamide, or AD, is a dough conditioner that makes bread softer, more elastic, and easier to process at industrial scale. Bakers praised it for cutting fermentation time, improving crumb structure, and producing consistent results batch after batch. If you've ever eaten a fast food sandwich bun or a packaged sub-roll, you've almost certainly eaten it. Ada entered commercial baking in the United States in the 1960s and became a staple of industrial bread production through the 1970s and 80s. The FDA approved it as a flour bleaching agent and dough improver, and its use quietly spread from fast food chains to grocery store breads nationwide. Generations of Americans consumed it in every burger bun and hoagie roll without ever seeing it mentioned on a menu board. But Ada is also used in the manufacturing of yoga mats and shoe soles, a fact that sparked a viral public outcry when food blogger Vani Heri exposed its use at Subway in 2014. More critically, when Ada is heated during baking, it breaks down into urethane, a known carcinogen. The World Health Organization has linked occupational Ada exposure to respiratory illness and asthma in workers. The European Union and Australia banned Ada as a food additive years before the controversy erupted in the USP by Subway removed it from its bread formula in 2014, following a petition signed by nearly 50,000 people. The FDA still classifies Adda as generally recognized as safe for use in food. It can still be found in dozens of commercially produced breads on American shelves today. The ingredient that holds your sandwich together may be the same one holding yoga mats together. Number 10. Propylparaben. This next one is lurking in foods you'd never suspect. Propylparaben is a preservative that keeps tortillas soft, muffins fresh, and processed foods shelf-stable for weeks longer than they would last naturally. It is a synthetic compound closely related to a chemical family that nature produces in small amounts, and food manufacturers have used it quietly for decades because it is cheap, effective, and reliably prevents products from going stale. Parabens entered the food preservation industry in the mid-20th century and were widely adopted across baked goods, beverages, and condiments by the 1960s and 70s. The FDA approved propylparaben for use in food, and it appeared on ingredient panels without fanfare for generations. It was the kind of additive that families absorbed through their daily eating habits without ever thinking to question it. But propylparaben is a known endocrine disruptor, a compound that mimics estrogen in the human body and interferes with hormone signaling. Studies have linked it to reduced testosterone levels, decreased sperm counts, and developmental abnormalities in animal models. The European Food Safety Authority lowered its acceptable daily intake for propylparaben to near zero in 2013, citing concerns about hormonal disruption in children. The European Union banned propylparaben in food in 2006, nearly 2 decades ago. Denmark had acted even earlier. In the United States, the FDA still permits its use, and it appears in hundreds of products, including tortillas, muffins, and processed beverages. A 2015 Danish street study estimated that children in Europe were exceeding safe exposure thresholds primarily through dietary intake before the ban took full effect. An ingredient that quietly mimics your hormones deserves more than a line at the bottom of a label. Number 9. Sodium nitrite. Sodium nitrite gives hot dogs, bacon, and deli meats that signature pink color and the savory, slightly smoky flavor that makes them so deeply satisfying. It also prevents botulism, one of the most lethal bacterial toxins known to medicine, which made it a genuine public health benefit when it first entered the meat processing industry. For decades, it seemed like a straightforward win for food safety. Sodium nitrite became standard in American meat curing practices by the early 20th century, with USDA regulations formalizing its use in the 1920s and 30s. Post-war Americans embraced processed meats enthusiastically, and sodium nitrite cured products became household staples. Cold cuts, frankfurters, and canned meats appeared on Furkos. Government and Indus both convenient and reliably safe. But when sodium nitrite interacts with proteins in cured meat, especially during high-heat cooking, it forms compounds called nitrosamines, several of which the Interagency for Research on Cancer classifies as probable human carcinogens. In 2015, the IARC formally designated processed meats as Group 1 carcinogens, placing them in the same cancer risk category as tobacco and asbestos, specifically for colorectal cancer. The 2015 IARC announcement sent shockwaves through the $200 billion global processed meat industry. Research estimates that every 50 grams of processed meat consumed daily, roughly 2 slices of bacon, increases colorectal cancer risk by approximately 18%. The WHO backed the findings, and several countries moved to require warning labels on nitrite-cured products, though the United States has not followed. The ingredient that kept meat safe from one danger may have quietly introduced another. Number 8. Partially hydrogenated oils. You might already have this in your kitchen, or at least you did until very recently. Partially hydrogenated oils, the source of artificial trans fats, were once celebrated as a triumph for food science. They kept margarine spreadable, gave packaged cookies and crackers their addictive melt-in-your-mouth texture, and extended the shelf life of baked and fried foods to lengths that natural fats couldn't match. Crisco, introduced in 1911, was actively marketed as cleaner and more modern than animal lard. Trans fats became a cornerstone of American food manufacturing through the mid-20th century, appearing in everything from restaurant fryers to packaged snack cakes. In the 1960s and 70s, public health campaigns even promoted margarine over butter as the heart-healthy choice, a message backed by the food industry and largely accepted by a trusting public. For half a century, the official advice was to eat more trans fats, not fewer. But decades of research told a different story. Trans fats raise LDL cholesterol, lower HDL cholesterol, trigger systemic inflammation, and dramatically increase the risk of coronary heart disease. By 2006, the FDA required trans fat content to appear on nutrition labels. Harvard researchers estimated that trans fats caused approximately 50,000 premature deaths per year in the United States alone. The FDA issued its final determination in 2015 that partially hydrogenated oils were no longer generally recognized as safe and set a removal deadline of June 2018. The WHO launched a global initiative to eliminate trans fats by 2023. The decades during which they were not only permitted but actively promoted as a healthy alternative represent one of the most costly dietary policy failures in American history. The fat that was sold as healthy for 50 years quietly contributed to one of the leading causes of death in the developed world. Number 7. Saccharin. Saccharin was the original artificial sweetener, a white crystalline powder hundreds of times sweeter than sugar that seemed to offer all the pleasure of sweetness without a single calorie. Eaters embraced it. Diabetics depended on it. For the better part of a century, the little pink packet of sweet and low sat on diner tables across America as a symbol of smart, modern eating. Saccharin was discovered accidentally in 1879 by a Johns Hopkins chemist and became commercially available by the early 1900s. During both World War I and World War II, sugar rationing made it an essential substitute, cementing its place in the American diet. President Theodore Roosevelt famously defended saccharin against its early critics, reportedly telling his chief food safety officer that anyone who believed it was dangerous was simply an idiot. But in 1977, a Canadian study found that high doses of saccharin caused bladder cancer in male rats. The U.S. Congress responded by mandating warning labels on all saccharin-containing products, labels that stated explicitly, "This product contains saccharin which has been determined to cause cancer in laboratory animals." Those warnings remained on products for over 2 decades. The labeling requirement triggered fierce opposition from diabetic advocacy groups and the food industry, which argued the rat studies used doses equivalent to a human drinking 800 cans of diet soda daily. The FDA proposed an outright ban, but retreated under public pressure. Saccharin was removed from the National Toxicology Program's carcinogen list in 2000, though independent scientists have never fully closed the debate about its long-term biological effects. A sweetener that survived 2 world wars and a congressional battle deserves more scrutiny than a pink packet suggests. Number 6. Carrageenan. Additives is a natural-sounding ingredient derived from red seaweed that gives chocolate milk its smooth texture, prevents infant formula from separating, and adds a creamy, full-bodied consistency to dairy alternatives like alternatives like almond. Manufacturers favor it because it is plant-based, inexpensive, and performs reliably across a wide range of food categories. It sounds almost wholesome. Extracted from Irish moss and related red algae, carrageenan has been used in traditional Irish cooking for centuries. By the mid-20th century, the food industry had industrialized its production and incorporated it across dairy products, deli meats, pet foods, and infant nutrition formulas. The FDA classified it as generally recognized as safe, and it appeared on the ingredient panels of thousands of organic and conventional products alike. But decades of animal research have linked carrageenan to intestinal inflammation, ulcerations, and colon tumors. Researcher Wan at the University of Illinois at Chicago spent over 20 years publishing studies showing that carrageenan activated inflammatory pathways in human cells, pathways associated with irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease, and colorectal cancer. The National Organic Standards Board voted in 2016 to remove carrageenan from its list of approved substances for certified organic food, a recommendation the USDA ultimately reversed under significant industry lobbying pressure. The European Commission banned carrageenan in infant formula in 2018, citing precautionary concerns about intestinal permeability in newborns. In the United States, it remains approved and continues to appear in hundreds of products marketed as natural or organic. An ingredient pulled from the sea and praised by tradition can still carry risks that tradition never anticipated. Number 5. Artificial food dyes. This next group of additives has been quietly debated for decades, and the evidence against them has never stopped building. Red 40, yellow 5, and yellow 6 are the most widely consumed artificial food colorings in America. They make breakfast cereals look vibrant, candy appear irresistible, and sports drinks glow with shades that nature never produced. They are cheap, stable, and extraordinarily effective at making processed food look exactly as appealing as manufacturers intend it to look. Synthetic food dyes trace their origins to coal tar chemistry in the late 19th century. By the mid-20th century, the FDA had certified dozens of artificial colors for widespread food use, and American manufacturers adopted them wholesale. Children grew up eating brightly colored cereals, fruit snacks, and soft drinks, whose entire visual appeal owed itself to petroleum-derived chemistry. It felt modern, cheerful, and entirely normal. But a landmark 2007 study published in The Lancet, funded by the UK's Food Standards Agency, found that mixtures of artificial food dyes significantly increased hyperactivity in children across multiple age groups. The European Union responded by requiring warning labels on any food containing these dyes, stating they may have an adverse effect on activity and attention in children. The FDA reviewed the same evidence and declined to act. The EU warning requirement implemented in 2010 prompted European food manufacturers to reformulate their products using natural colorings like beet juice and paprika extract, changes they made exclusively for European markets. The same companies continued selling dye-containing versions in the United States. In 2023, California became the first U.S. state to restrict specific artificial dyes from school meals, and the FDA announced an initiation of formal review in 2024. The colors that make food irresistible to children may come with a cost that parents never see on the label. Number 4. BR and BH. Butylated hydroxyanisole and butylated hydroxytoluene, BTR and BHT, are antioxidant preservatives that prevent the fats and oils in packaged foods from going rancid. They are the reason potato chips stay crispy for months. Cereal retains its flavor after weeks on the shelf, and packaged snacks outlast anything a natural product could manage. Without them, the modern processed food industry would look very different. BA and BHT entered the American food supply in the 1950s and became standard additives across snack foods, breakfast cereals, frozen meals, and beverages. The FDA granted them GRAS status during the optimistic post-war era of food science, when synthetic additives were widely celebrated as improvements over natural processes. For decades, they appeared unremarked on millions of ingredient lists in homes across the country. But the National Toxicology Program has listed BR as reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen since 2011, based on evidence it causes tumors in the forestomach of rats, mice, and hamsters. BHT has shown evidence of promoting tumor growth in animal studies as well. Both compounds are also classified as potential endocrine disruptors, with research linking them to behavioral and hormonal changes in animal models. The European Union restricts BR and BH to specific food categories at low concentrations, and has moved to phase out BR from most applications under updated safety reviews. Japan has banned BAR entirely from food use. In the United States, both remain on the FDA's GRAS list and continue to appear in thousands of products, from breakfast cereal to chewing gum to shortening. California lists barter as a known carcinogen under Proposition 65. The preservative keeping your chips fresh may itself be something worth preserving your health against. Number 3. Propyl gallate. Propyl is one of the food industry's most dependable antioxidant preservatives, a compound added to edible fats, chewing gum, frozen dinners, soup bases and processed meats to prevent oxidation and extend shelf life. It works best alongside BSAR and BHT, and the three are often combined in a preservation cocktail found across products, ranging from lard-based pastries to microwave popcorn. For manufacturers, it is invisible and indispensable. Propyl gallate was approved by the FDA in the 1940s and saw widespread commercial adoption through the 1950s and 60s. It quietly became a fixture of industrial food manufacturing, appearing in the background of ingredient panels without attracting much public attention. Generations of Americans consumed it regularly through processed foods, without any awareness of its presence or any public debate about its safety record. But animal studies have found that propyl gallate causes liver and kidney tumors in rats at high doses, and the National Toxicology Program has flagged it as a possible carcinogen. It has also been identified as a potential endocrine disruptor, with research suggesting it can mimic estrogen and interfere with thyroid hormone function. The European Food Safety Authority has maintained strict restrictions and repeatedly flagged significant data gaps in its safety profile. The European Union has restricted propyl gallate use to narrow food categories with tight concentration limits, and ongoing EFSA reviews have repeatedly called for updated toxicological data that the food industry has been slow to supply. In the United States, it remains on the GRAS list, with no maximum concentration specified for several food categories. An estimated 2,000+ American food products contain propyl gallate, most without any consumer awareness whatsoever. An additive that has been generally recognized as safe for 80 years is not the same as one that has been proved safe. Number 2. Acyl sulfame potassium. Acyl sulfame potassium, sold under the brand name ACE-K, is 200 times sweeter than sugar and found in thousands of diet beverages, sugar-free gums, low-calorie desserts, and protein supplements. It is often paired with aspartame to mask bitter aftertastes, and together they create the sweetness profile consumers associate with zero-calorie indulgence. It has been positioned as the intelligent choice for people managing their weight for decades. ACE was discovered accidentally by a German chemist in 1967 and approved by the FDA in 1988, initially for use in tabletop sweeteners and dry food products. Its application expanded dramatically through the 1990s and 2000s as the diet food market boomed. It quietly became one of the most widely consumed artificial sweeteners in the world, found in products from Diet Coke to sugar, free yogurt to children's medicines, generating almost no public controversy along the way. But the original FDA approval for ACE-K was based on studies that independent researchers have since described as scientifically inadequate by modern standards. A 2017 study published in PLOS ONE found that mice consuming ACE-K developed disrupted gut microbiome composition, unexpected weight gain, and impaired cognitive function. Additional research has linked it to potential genotoxicity, the capacity to damage DNA, and to interference with metabolic hormone signaling. Despite mounting concerns, ACE-K has never undergone a comprehensive safety reassessment, by the FDA since its 1988 approval. A 2021 review published in Frontiers in Nutrition concluded that existing safety data is insufficient to confidently declare it safe for long-term human consumption. It appears in an estimated 5,000 plus food and beverage products in the United States alone, and global consumption has risen steadily, making it one of the most widely consumed compounds with a still unresolved safety profile. Being approved decades ago is not the same as being proven safe today. Number 1. Aspartame. Aspartame may be the most consumed artificial sweetener in human history. Found in over 6,000 products worldwide, from Diet Coke and NutraSweet to sugar-free chocolate, chewable vitamins, yogurt, and breakfast cereals. It represents the food industry's most ambitious promise. All the sweetness of sugar, none of the consequences. For hundreds of millions of people managing their weight or controlling blood sugar, it seemed like the perfect solution that science had finally delivered. Aspartame was discovered accidentally in 1965 by a chemist at G.D. Searle who licked his finger while working on an anti-ulcer drug compound. After a long and deeply contested FDA approval process spanning the 1970s and into the early 1980s, including a period when a public board of inquiry recommended against approval, it was cleared for use in carbonated beverages in 1983. By the 1990s, the diet soda market had exploded, and aspartame had become inescapable. Consumers were told repeatedly by manufacturers, by regulators, and by mainstream health authorities that it was completely and unambiguously safe. But in July 2023, the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer classified as a possible human carcinogen, Group 2B, based on limited but real evidence linking it to hepatocellular carcinoma, a form of liver cancer. That same month, the WHO's Joint Expert Committee on Food Additives upheld the existing acceptable daily intake, producing a dissonant dual message heard around the world, possibly carcinogenic, but acceptable to keep consuming at current levels. The IARC announcement reverberated through a global food and beverage industry, generating an estimated $24 billion annually from aspartame containing products. PepsiCo had already removed aspartame from Diet Pepsi in 2015 under consumer pressure, reinstated it in 2016, then removed it again in 2020, a cycle that reflects the industry's own resolve. Dozens of independent studies published between 2000 and 2023 have associated aspartame consumption with headaches, mood disruption, gut microbiome alterations, and metabolic effects. Regulatory agencies have maintained approved status throughout. For an additive consumed daily by hundreds of millions of people across 60 years, that unresolved debate may be the most unsettling fact of all. The sweetener trusted by more people than any other may be the one that demanded the most scrutiny from the very beginning. History has a way of teaching the same lesson through different ingredients. What one generation called safe, the next generation quietly banned. What one era celebrated as a breakthrough in food science, the next era recognized as an uncontrolled experiment, conducted on the public without its full knowledge or consent. The additives on this list weren't hidden through malice alone. They were hidden by assumption, by convenience, and by the slow, expensive process of learning the hard way what human bodies actually tolerate. Hit that subscribe button to discover more buried truths about what science has quietly revealed about the food we eat every day. And check out the next video on your screen about the most dangerous pesticides found in everyday fruits and vegetables, what the EPA has documented and what it hasn't told you.